Hello, everyone. I see there's a couple people that are trickling in. Welcome, welcome. My name is Katie Hoy, and I'm the Data Solutions Analyst and Data Architect for the Executive Degree Programs Office. And I'm joined by my colleague, Andy Leibel, our Assistant Director of Admissions. And we're glad to have you with us for today's MIT Executive MBA Faculty Masterclass. We're excited to feature Professor Roberto Rigobon, one of MIT Sloan's most engaging and insightful faculty members, and has been with MIT for 32 years. Roberto teaches our Leading in a Global Context, or LGC course, one of our week-long modules in the MIT Executive Degree Program. He's a leading expert in economics, and tonight he'll be talking about his research in AI. And he's also known for bringing his energy and his clarity and his humor to every discussion. He is a favorite of our students. So today's session will be recorded and it'll run about 45 minutes. We'll use both the chat and the Q&A. So if you have questions about the program, please use the Q&A function, and Andy will be able to answer those questions. But if you have questions specifically for Roberto, please use the chat function and he'll be able to see your questions there. Again, thank you so much for joining us. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Roberto Rigobon.
Thank you so much, Katie and Andy. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I also teach an elective on the last semester on Thursday nights, yes, which I think is the only course that we have that is joint Sloan Fellows with the EMBAs, because they are on complete different schedules, but they don't allow me to teach on weekends. So I teach on a Thursday, so then both crops can take the class. So anyways, thank you so much for being here. Let me share my slides and we'll start right away. I think I have taught in the EMBA every year except my sabbatical year. So I love teaching the EMBA. So it's great that I have the chance to do this with all of you. Let me just make sure that I have the chat here. And that's it. Perfect. Okay. So let me tell you more or less what I want to do today. I want to do three things. First, probably you have heard about people panicking on artificial intelligence. And there are like two types of people. The ones that think that artificial intelligence is gonna make us like superhumans. Okay, that's the one side. These are the incredibly optimistic people, and then the other ones that will make us completely useless humans, which are the ones that are thinking that artificial intelligence is gonna substitute all of us. I'm a macroeconomist, and I'm absolutely certain that macroeconomics should be something that should be substituted by an AI or any random generating number. I mean, it can be substituted by Excel, to be honest. We make so many mistakes when we make decisions in macroeconomics that we are truly useless, okay? And so substituting us for random computer generating policies will clearly do much better and improve humankind in general. But what I want to do in today is to talk about three things. One is, what is the purpose of what we're doing? So when we're talking about artificial intelligence, for what purpose? We're developing a technology and we're going to use a tool. So, you know, what will be the purpose? So, and this matters a lot, truly. It does matter a lot. How do we design? And I will have a point here that I want to make. So if we, by any chance, design thinking that we want to substitute people, the products and services that we will find are different than if we design thinking that we want to complement people. So it's just kind of important to analyze when we want to do this. Then the second topic that I want to talk is about how do we transform wealth into welfare? And this is something very important for general purpose technologies, so artificial intelligence, the car, electricity, etc. All of those are what we call general purpose technologies. And how do we make sure that this creates welfare for all, current and future generations? They will create wealth, so somebody will make a lot of money. But then the question is how we can make sure that all this wealth that we create is someone translated into welfare for all citizens. Okay, so that's the second one, and there are very important complementary investments that need to take place. So I will talk about all those investments, and I will talk a little bit maybe about Uber. Uber, I always think, is a brilliant idea, terribly implemented. Um, is one of these examples where we did not do these investments, and in fact, it has not produced the productivity gains that it should have had. So I will kind of go along in this topic about discussing some of the complementary investments. But that leads to one of them, a very important complementary investment is what are the skills? So we need to invest in skills that are complementary to the technology. So I will talk about that research, and that's the part that is called the Epoch of AI. It's a paper that we have just written. So I will talk a little bit about what are the skills that are complementary to AI. So this is three topics. One is how do we design? What is the purpose of the design? The second one is how do we transform these ideas into welfare for all of us? And then third, among these investments, one of them in particular is about skills. So what are the skills that we have to develop? Okay. And so the first one is I don't know you guys, but I am a terrible tennis player. Okay. So I'm a relatively good golfer and a terrible tennis player. But I have always liked to play one set against Rafael Nadal. My mother's from Spain. I am from Venezuela. So I would say that the last 15 years, I have been sending emails to the PR group in Rafael Nadal, inviting him to come and give a conference to MIT. And I always say, like, and when you come, I would like to, play a set with you. And and the emails have become kind of a funny thing in my family because, for example, once I bought the exact same shirt that he has here, and I was wearing, and I sent the email, said, look, I have the same bicep that you have, so why don't play together? So anyway, so the emails became funnier and funnier through time. When he retired, the email was from the whole family saying like, well, now you have nothing to do, you have retired, so you have no excuse. They have never answered. So, I feel very rejected. So I have been actually sending. But my point is, imagine that by some, you know, random act, he decides to say, okay, I'm going to go to MIT and I will play one set with Roberto. My only goal is, I know I'm not going to win the set. I know I'm not going to win the game, but I would like to see if I can win 1 point, just 1 point. And so how do I do that? So I decided, well, we have three ways to solve this. One is to use what economists do, okay? So as an economist, there's one solution, which is to outsource this. So I will hire Djokovic, I'll play Djokovic money. Djokovic on my behalf will win the point, and then I will claim that I did it. Is that clear? By the way, this cartoon here, I gave my picture to Gemini, and I said, create a cartoon that looks like me. This is embarrassingly horrible. Is that okay? I didn't know I was so ugly looking. But anyway, this is what Gemini decided that the way I look. So now, this is what a CEO does. Is that okay? We pay somebody else to do a job and then we take credit. Okay. But it's not clear that I can brag about the point. Now, will Djokovic win 1 point? For sure he will win. For sure. 1 point? Probability one that happens. So me outsourcing to Djokovic is an investment that has very little risk. Okay, I will actually achieve the outcome. Second one is that we use artificial intelligence, and here I want to analyze the two possibilities. One is a substitution. So one is I create a bionic arm that has a bazooka on top of it, okay, that will actually hit the wall or serve the ball at 400 miles an hour. And I will not be able to respond to serve or anything like that. But the point is, I have to try to win 1 point out of 12, the 12 serves. The question is if I can aim the bazooka to put it inside the rectangle, the serve rectangle, and I think I can. So I will build a bazooka and probably I will win the point. There's a third alternative, which is I use AI to improve my stroke, to improve the racket, change the materials of the racket, change the materials of the courts, and learn how to hit it. And so it's an improvement of is the swing and the equipment. So first question, can I hire Djokovic? The answer yes. Can I build a bazooka? Absolutely yes. This is not an engineering complicated issue. I actually find that this is kind of very simple. Is that okay? Not only that, I can make sure that I aim the bazooka with a camera, so that I will make sure that actually I will hit the square and serve correctly the first time. So there's no question I can build this. I mean, we do it for baseball, and we throw balls in a batting cage with very low technology at 100 miles an hour. So hitting a ball at 400 doesn't sound like too difficult. Can I build a racket to improve? And may I actually improve to be good enough to win the point? Oh no, this is actually very risky. So it's very interesting because the last one is very risky. Now, which one will produce more satisfaction? If I hire Djokovic and I win the point, can I brag about it? If I actually shoot the ball with a bazooka, will I be able to say that actually I won this in a fair manner? See, from the satisfaction point of view, the one that I want is the racket. But the racket is probably very expensive and very risky. But the other two that are less risky are less meaningful. Furthermore, which one I can sell? I'm telling you, if we build a new racket with new equipment that improves me good enough to win 1 point against Nadal, I will become a billionaire. Okay? I will sell that racket like 2 million times. Every single player that is as bad as me or slightly better will purchase their racket, because this new material will actually have the ability to improve my swing and my stroke. On the other hand, how many people will buy the bazooka? Like no one. This just changes the game. It's a completely useless device. What I'm saying this is because truly right now in the world we are on bazooka mode, okay? We are on pilots trying to determine what AI can do, not necessarily what we want to produce a better service. So this produces fear. I mean, in fact, all the tennis players, if we start building bazookas, all the tennis players are going to say, like, we're changing our game. And this is not about talent anymore. It's about who has the fastest bazooka. It's just a completely useless redefinition of the game. So it produces fear. We don't even know if we want to actually produce it. We don't even know what the social outcome or the social welfare of that will be. Uh, and therefore, but on the other hand, the scientists are on, I just want to see if we can do it. You see? So research is about a pilot. See? So we are on building pilots right now. Business is about building products. So the racket is a product, the bazooka is a pilot. So why this matters is because in practice, in your organizations, if by any chance you design the AI to substitute workers, you are going to substitute them. I'm telling you, for sure you're going to substitute them. Will that make you more profitable? Very likely the answer is yes. Yeah, producing the exact same thing with less humans, very likely you're going to be more profitable. But the problem is that you will never actually know how the company will look like if you have used the possibility to design to improve the workers as opposed to substitute the workers. So we are trapped in an equilibrium in which we don't even look at the possibilities because we make money by just substituting. Therefore, we don't even know how the company will look like, how our services will look like if I would have experimented by implementing the AI as a complement to the workers and not as a substitute. So this is kind of a little bit what I think has happened with Uber. Instead of changing the ownership of cars, we are just doing a taxi. So we just replace the taxi with another taxi. So it's a complete waste of ingenuity. We build a bazooka, and the bazooka, in some sense, yes, produces profits, but doesn't necessarily improve our welfare or our competitiveness as a country. It's a waste of an idea. So in fact, I will return to this. So design, the objective design is it matters. And then not all the jobs will be complemented. Not all the jobs will be substituted. We have to be smart about making these decisions. In other words, so this is complicated from the implementation because we don't know what the technology might be able to do. I just know that we use the technology incorrectly, we are going to get into an equilibrium that we will never know what could have happened. So again, it's a wasted opportunity. So there are so the slides. By the way, Kathy, we can share the slides with the participants, don't we? At some point in time, yeah, Andy, yeah, okay,
Yes, we can share
okay.
them afterwards
Yeah. So
with the recording.
Yeah, with it. Exactly. Okay, so we'll send it afterwards. So there are more things that are in the slides, but I'm gonna discuss only. So I would like this to be a conversation. So, uh, um, so want to give time for questions. So the second point I want to say is how do we transform wealth to welfare? No, how do we do this? And it's very interesting that there are 5 things. Now, by the way, uh, general purpose technologies have the property to always be very sneaky, very disruptive. By the way, that word disruptive was invented in the 19th century when they were describing these technologies like electricity, like pasteurization, like vaccines, and stuff like that. So and the reason is that these technologies are designed to solve one problem, but then they have unintended consequences somewhere else. So, I mean, the vaccine or the antibiotics are designed to solve one problem, which is, the virus or the bacteria that I want to, solve. I mean, I have an infection. I want to, save the patient from an infection. Um, but the unintended consequences are expanded life tremendously. So we buy years of life, and then suddenly we have to start thinking about other problems like Alzheimer's, and now it's more frequent, and we have to start thinking about other problems like when do you retire? I mean, we designed the life cycle of humans at the beginning of the 20th century when our life expectancy was 40 years old. So this explains why we study the first 15 years of our life, then we work for 20, and then we retire for 5. That was more or less how we designed life. As these technologies, pasteurization, vaccines, all the health that we learn, public health, public provision of sewage, etc. When we do that, what we do is we just expanded this, and what the society has done is we have not even thought about what our life cycle should be. What we did was extend every period. So now we study 25 years, we work for 50 years, you retire at 75, and then you enjoy vacations after the age of 75, which implicitly means that you will probably not be able to climb Kilimanjaro. Is that okay? At 75, there were very few that will be able to do that. So we are just extending this, as opposed to think that maybe what we need to do is to change that life cycle, is that to have vacations in the middle, to reinvent yourself. For example, I think that I tell this to all the MIT students when they are graduating. I said, you are 22 years old, graduating from undergrad, and you are from a premier institution. Conditional on having lived the first 22 years, they have 60 more years of life expectancy minimum. And I always ask them, what is the likelihood that what you have learned so far will be useful for you for the next 60 years? That is enough, that you don't have to come back to school ever again in the 60 years. The answer to that is zero. Zero chance that what they have learned at the age of 22 will be all that they need. And I said, so you need to come back. So start planning, because in 15 years, you are going to be useless. So be clear that at the age of 40, you better need to start thinking what you're going to do next. And by the way, you need to come and relearn things because, the world has changed too fast. And then, by the way, by the age of 60, you probably need to actually relearn. And when you are learning at the age of 40, take a sabbatical, take a 6-month climb Kilimanjaro. Okay, so just do something in your life that you're not going to do at 85, but that you can do at 45. So just make sure that you enjoy life in the process. So part of this general purpose technologies that they have this disruptive feature. There are five of them that have impact on labor markets. So that changes and substitutes what we do as humans. Okay, so I'm not going to discuss that. It's the first industrial revolution, the second one, the computer, the internet, and now artificial intelligence. So there are five. Now, in order to make these five revolutions useful for all the humans, we need to do five types of investments. Okay, one is on education. We need to invest in complementary skills. I will give you an example now with a car. Okay. Second, we need to have capital, investment, and infrastructure that needs to be complementary to the technology. Third, we need to invest in norms and regulation that are complementary to the technology, that makes the technology better. Fourth, we need to work on public access to make a affordable and, by the way, now I'm just telling you, these slides exist before the affordability topics that we have right now in the United States. But you need to make the technology to be available to everybody. So you have to make it affordable somehow. And lastly, for those that affect labor, you need to improve the labor standards. For those that affect health, you need health standards. For those that affect the life cycle, you will need life cycles. And my just discussion of the life cycle has probably highlighted is the fact that we have not had that discussion. Okay, we are just extending this, and we are hoping that people learn on the job, but I do not think that the society can be competitive, nor I think that the society is healthy by doing that. Yeah, we're leaving many people behind because we have not designed it in such a way that people need to go back and do a master. That this is, and by the way, the master, it's okay that you do it right after undergrad, but you need another one when you're older. And then you're thinking, okay, what do I need my next, 15 years or 20 years of work to be? Given the experience that I have, I want to reinvent myself. So it's a different master. It's not the same one that you do in undergrad. It's a completely different one. So coming back is something that is I find that is going to be the standard of the future, but we are not having those discussions. We only discuss the age of retirement, and this is because financially we cannot sustain people. I mean, just so it's the budget. It's an issue with the budget, but we are not thinking about quality of life. So extending the age of retirement to be later and later means that you're going to have a terrible life. So retiring to do nothing doesn't sound like a good strategy. Okay, so let me show you an example. Monique, thank you. Yeah, redefining ourselves is. By the way, if you are in this talk, it's because you are kind of thinking about redefining yourself. So congratulations. So yeah, the societal discussion have not taken place, but it is kind of something that you do. And not only that, is what I find is that the EMBAs are very socially conscious. So the redefinition is not just to, okay, let me think about how I'm going to use AI or something like that. It's almost always, okay, let me think about how I use this technology and this learning to do something good for others. Kind of is so interesting because the EMBAs, when they come and they have them in my class, they start all the sentences by the others. No, not by me or my family, just others, other people, like how you can make the life of others better. And so it's actually nice. Yeah. Wait, let me just then give you an example, okay? I can give you, okay, let me give you the facts, okay? These are not exactly the facts because I did not find the data for 1900, it was 1902, but again, you can give me, a little break, okay? So it's not exactly 900 New York City. But car and horses. In New York City, at the beginning of 20th century, we had about 200,000 horses, okay? Everybody was on a horse. And we were using these for transportation, for carriages, for deliveries, etc. We were using the horses for everything, also for enjoyment. And we only had 1,000 cars that were registered. So it's a little bit less than that. The data that I have is a little bit less than that, but let's just say that we have 1,000 cars. Today in the United States, we only have 200 horses. They're mostly in Central Park and stuff like that. And there are some that are on the police force, but they didn't give me the number, so I don't know. But it cannot be 180,000, no? So just like, the horses have to be like a tiny number, okay? And we have 2 million cars that are registered. Even though, United States, New York has a very good transportation system, still we're using the cars. So clearly the cars won. Is that okay? I mean, clearly. I mean, there's no doubt that the cars actually won this battle with the horses. But if you go back to the 20th century, the cars were worse than the horses, significantly worse. They were slower, they were less reliable, and they were not all terrain. I mean, like a horse can go everywhere. The cars needed a road, and so they were useless. So you think about it, we could have invested on better horses, stronger horses, faster horses, and better riders. We could have invested on that, which is invest in everything that is against the technology. We could have been fighting the technology, but that's not the way we did it. What we did was first we learned how to drive. That's the education. So we invested in education that is complementary to the technology. So you are making the technology better by making the individuals that are going to use the technology better prepared to use it. So we get the learning. Second, we invested in infrastructure and complementary capital. So we build the roads and we deploy the roads everywhere. Third, we invested in norms. Like, I mean, you understand that no one told people that you have to ride your horse on the right of the road. I mean, that didn't exist, no? Like, like you ride wherever you want. Is that clear? But now we needed to say, well, you drive on the right, and when you see an octagon that is red, you stop, and then these three little lights here have this apart meaning. And we started putting norms and regulation for the cars. We put speed limits, stuff like that. So seat belt and so on. So we were including a regulation. That regulation implied that the people that were designing the cars needed to use their restrictions and their creativity to produce better services. So you have capital that makes the car better. You make education that makes the car better, and vice versa. Is that okay? And we have norms that allows us to operate in a much better way. I don't know how many of you come from an emerging market. I was born in Venezuela, where we have no norms on transit whatsoever, and it's an absolute complete disaster. When I came to the United States for the first time, I couldn't believe how easy it was to drive in this country. Because there you have to constantly think that people are going to violate the law, they're going to violate the traffic laws, and you are always exposed to an accident. So that makes you a much worse driver. Now you are prepared to drive perfectly. Is that okay? In New York. And that's why, in New York, almost all the drivers are foreigners, okay? It's because we have been trained to drive in really like terrible circumstances. You don't have too many Americans that drive in New York City, okay? So just said, we have them just because we like diversity. But truly, this is our job, okay? And in fact, if you drive in Bangladesh or India, you are the best driver on earth. I mean, I don't know if you have ever been in India, but driving in India in a highway, it will make you very spiritual, because the fact that you get to the destination alive is a miracle. Is that okay? You just come out of the car, you kiss the road, and you say like a miracle just happened. I made it alive. Is that okay? So truly, these drivers are the best drivers on earth just to get there. These three are not enough, because something that is very important is the access. So think about the roads. It's like such a beautiful example in which the access to the road is unrestricted, but we pay with taxes. So there's a humongous equalizing force here, because we pay taxes given by income, and the access to the road is by just showing up. And in fact, many people that do not pay for the road, they show up in the road and they use it. So it's just a marvelous socializing force. Another thing about the car is that the house and the car are the two only assets on earth that every single country accepts as a collateral. I find that quite surprising, because the refrigerator from the social point of view, the refrigerator is far more important to humankind than the car, significantly more important. And the refrigerators are not bought by in credit in most countries. They are not. They cannot be used as a collateral. You might buy it with credit, but they are not a good collateral. The cars are. It's a fantastic collateral. And why? You need several things to that. You need a secondary market. What is the value of your refrigerator after 5 years of use? If you don't know the value, then you cannot use it as a collateral. The car is almost like public information. The house stage. So truly, look at all this is a decision. We decided to allow the car to be used as a collateral. It was not a regulation or anything like that. And that allows for a lot of access. So you, and by the way, we have then a proliferation of different type of cars, the Toyota Corolla, which is what I buy, and to the Ferrari, which is, the faculty from accounting and finance buy. Is that okay? Just, we have differences in salary. So economists buy Toyota Corollas, they buy the Ferraris, okay? Or the Teslas. And so we are on the Corollas and the Hondas. And finally, something that was really striking about the car is that this notion of the 5-day week, 40 hours a week work was invented in Ford. So, I mean, there was discussion before this, the car, the average week had 6 days of work. So we were working 6 days with an average of 12 to 14 hours of work every day. So we were working on the 80 hours, more or less what McKinsey does today. Is that okay? The McKinsey consultants are still in the 18th century. Is that okay? 19th century. They are still in the 19th century work standards. But it was actually the auto industry. So Ford gave these 5 days, 40 hours a week deals to their workers, and they double the hourly payment. And that makes sense. If you're more productive, I mean, they invented mass production. So if you're more productive and you're going to find a product that is going to be sold to billions of individuals, every worker is more productive, and therefore they deserve a little bit more salary. They will be able to produce more, and I need to work less. So I just work less. So why I want to tell you this is because when I look at the internet, I see many failures on this. First, the complementary skills were very difficult to learn until iOS was invented. So when this was invented and all these, icons, and we use them with the finger and all the stuff, this idea from Steve Jobs, before this, it was very difficult to do this. So the investment on complementary skills was complicated. The infrastructure, instead of being public, it was private. And what we did was to bundle the infrastructure in the product. So the internet is embodied in the phone. Norms and regulation have been extremely lenient. And I understand that at the beginning of the internet, we want to be lenient. We don't know exactly what we're inventing, so it's okay. We're on pilot mode, we're on bazooka mode. So let's try it out. But after 15 years of success, you know what? I find it completely crazy that if I say something about a person in the New York Times that is a lie, okay, that is a damaging lie, I will be sued and the New York Times will be sued because of what I wrote. But I can put that in a blog and nothing happens? How is it possible? How is it possible that we just don't have like minimum standards of behavior in these markets? The access has been, in a very clever way, has been given by a barter where we give private information to Google and then Google gives us free access to search. So I think we could do this better, but at least the access has been resolved by a barter. Okay? But this is because it's private. If this were public, then the access will be easier. And in labor standards, we have been done a terrible job, absolutely terrible job. We have created many, many really bad jobs, and people. By the way, the fact that inflation is so costly for the United States, and the fact that both Biden and Trump are struggling with the fact that the U.S. workers are suffering, the fact that the workers, the party that represents the workers is a right-wing party, which is like a crazy thing, actually, in any country in the history of humankind. What is happening in the United States. The fact that we have such an incredible level of polarization in the United States is because we are not invested in the people, truly. So let me just tell you one last thing, which is our research. I am not going to say too much about this, but we're working on what are the skills that the computer will not be able to replicate. Not now, not ever. So this is about a limitation that the computer has. The AI works with something that is called universal approximation function. And these universal approximation functions have limitations. The universal approximation function is exactly what we have on the brain as well. So our brain has limitations. But the issue is that we complement our weaknesses, or, our weaknesses in our brain, we complement them with other things. Like, for example, what we call moral intelligence, what we call, emotional intelligence, what we talk about the fact that we are a social animal, and stuff like that. So what happens is that when we create something, is not, we don't create them in isolation, we create them with a purpose, and that purpose tends to include others, and it tends to include a moral compass and so on. So these are things that need to be added to the design. An AI that is only working with a universal approximation function will not be able to solve. So things like judgment, they cannot be able to solve. Hope, the first thing the computer will lose is hope. In the case of humans, we always said, oh, hope is the last thing that you lose. Well, I mean, hope is to think that something will happen when the probability is zero. And that's what an entrepreneur has. A computer will just give up very fast. A computer will not be able to. So these are all coming from statistical limitations. So we list the statistical limitations. But the way to understand it is that, for a computer, the value of a presence is not that important. So a hug is not that important. And in fact, a computer will say, well, I prefer to be in a Starbucks in a good climate, drinking my coffee in the hospital where my baby's been born. Because there's no advantage of being there. Actually, my wife is going to be just yelling at me. So why should I be there? I'm not making my wife better off. She's yelling at me, and let me just have my coffee. I'll show up later. Is that okay? So kind of an interesting thing is that we care. I want to be present. But when your point of view of efficiency, you should not be present. This is just, why should we play the game if you have no chance to win? The computer will say, like, it makes absolute no sense. If Kansas City is going to win again, or remember when the Patriots were winning every single Super Bowl, then why even play? They just play the last game. Let's assume that they're going to make it to the championship, and it's much efficient, more efficient. You don't have to send people to the stadiums, interrupt their life, all the hours lost, all the food that is lost, And so anyway, so this is what I wanted to do. Let me just stop sharing and take questions. So I think I have a question from Monique. Does my research on AI deals with the both and way of thinking? What do you mean by both way of thinking? So, presence and profits is needed. Yes. So what our research is, okay, is I will teach a whole class on this, a whole session of 3 hours, okay, on this. So I cannot make justice in this. So actually, this is what I just gave you today are summary of 2 classes. So we do the following: is what an AI entity in isolation will never be able to do. So solve a moral dilemma. For example, you see, Monique, they will never be able to solve a moral dilemma. You need to tell them how to achieve that solution. Now, what we therefore, in the future, our view is that in the future, we will do more judgment because the computer cannot do it. You see my point? So now that is independent of the way that individuals are going to make those moral judgments. You see, we have different societies and different cultures that they will attack the dilemmas differently, and therefore, in that sense, this is not limited by the ideologies of the individuals. Is limited by the fact that the computer will not be able to make the judgment call. Um, so I hope that kind of analyze. So this is not necessarily about how we individuals think differently. We think very differently. And for us, actually, in some instances, presence is very important. You know, someone that is doing physical therapy, presence is very important, especially at the beginning when you're learning how to do the exercises. Once you learn, then the presence is not as relevant. You see? So it's not like these are universally important in all the activities, but it's much easier to learn that way and transmit the information. Hope and vision and presence is kind of very important in that. So what we do is to try to think about what are the aspects that we humans do that trust, for example, that it would be very difficult for a computer to do and to get. I have an example on trust, and let me just go. How do AI tools fit within a broader framework of the history of technology? This is a very good question. The way I will put them in the past is one of these 5 revolutions that had impact on labor markets. You see, yeah. So the first one is the first industrial revolution. This is the steam engine, okay, and all the mechanization that had a massive impact on labor standards and how we worked, okay. Then the second one is the second industrial revolution, which is now the combustion engine, okay, and mass production. Then you have the transistor, I mean, but computers in general. Then will come the internet, and then comes AI. Now, if you think about it, the last 3 are kind of one building upon each other. So people that do innovation, they think about these 3 revolutions as different. I would say, like, you could not have done one without the other. So they don't sound that independent. But this is it. So, but electricity is one of them, and so on. So I put them into the category of general purpose technologies that had massive impact on labor markets. Can you share an example of AI product designed purposely to improve welfare? Oh, in the AI, no, not yet. Wow, what a good question. Diagnostic, maybe. So, but Marianne, I don't think we are there yet. But like breast cancer diagnostic, we know the following. The computer, so this is research, actually this is research from MIT, okay. She's the head of the computer science and artificial intelligence lab, okay. Her research did the following. They had, like, I don't know, 100,000 pictures of a cancer that is complicated to diagnose, okay. So they gave these 100,000 pictures to medical students and to doctors, and then they, by the way, these are all pictures that then we actually went down and did a biopsy, so we know whether or not it's a cancer. Is that clear? So just we know the outcome. But the people with the images, they didn't know exactly what it was. They had to make a call if it was a cancer or not. And humans were making mistakes, okay? So the diagnostic was not terribly good. The computer was also making mistakes. So just to give you an idea, I don't remember exactly the numbers, but I think it was 12% of the diagnosis of the computer were incorrect, and 8% of the diagnostics of the humans were incorrect. And by the way, some of these had cancer and some of these did not have cancer. So there was a mistake. Now, what was very interesting is that when you combine the 2 diagnoses, the mistake was 0.08. Why? The humans make the mistake of not seeing a pattern that is in the image. It's like the image is so detailed that I miss the pattern. And by the way, after seeing 20 pictures, I'm tired and I start losing my ability to detect the patterns. So the humans were making mistakes by not distinguishing a pattern that should have been seen. But the computers were making a mistake of not finding a pattern that they had not observed before, you see? So the computer was able to detect patterns that had been documented before. So then they are able to find the same pattern without being tired. But they cannot figure out a new pattern. So doing the extrapolation, they were really bad. But the humans were really good at extrapolation. So when they put the two together, the diagnostic becomes better. So we need to operationalize that. You see, Marianne, I think it can be done. So I'm not saying that it cannot be done, but I think it can be done. Corey, what policy regulation should be considered and implemented to shape emerging technologies and markets to benefit the working class and poor? Okay, so first this will depend. No, first be aware. Like my first thing will be aware. Like you just be aware. Um, we want fairness. We don't need pure equality, okay? But fairness, okay? Just be fairness. So be aware. First is be aware. The second is that at the beginning, the technologies need different type of support than at the end when the technologies have matured. And that pragmatism is what we are missing. So the case of the internet, I think, is very good. At the beginning, the internet, we didn't know what we were having. So we said, we allow everything. I mean, like, let's just do anything. So, but then when it matures, we have to say, okay, wait a second. Now let's stop violating privacy. Okay? Like, unless the content needs to be verified somehow. You cannot say whatever you want. And I don't know, you cannot sell, human trafficking, for example. That would be one that I would say like is a no-no. It's a trivial no-no. You see my point, and we still don't do it. We still are. So the norms need to evolve with the evolution of the technology, and the same happened to a country. Look, when a country is poor, we allow the country to violate intellectual property right, and it's perfectly fine. And we have a special treatment for that in the World Trade Organization. I mean, not everybody knows, but in the World Trade Organization, when you're an emerging market, you're qualified. You have certain benefits. Like, for example, you don't have to have fair trade. So I can put a tariff on the United States, but the United States will commit to have no tariffs. So I don't have to equalize or homogenize anything. No, I mean, I don't have any responsibility. I can violate the intellectual property rights, no problem. But again, I'm poor. Okay, so if Bangladesh violates the intellectual property rights, not a big deal. Okay, I think we can survive. But as the country becomes richer and richer, at some point in time, you have to say, well, you have to move from the kids' table to the adult table. In the adult table, we don't violate intellectual property rights. And I think this has been the problem with China, is that China has been growing, but they still want to play in the kids' table. And in fact, they still have the emerging market um, designation from the World Trade Organization. So is somebody here truly believes that in manufacturing, China is still an emerging market, that they need a special treatment? By the way, China in September of this year said, please take me out. We're so incompetent worldwide that the person that is receiving the benefit says, you know what, I think it's time for me to move to the adult table. By the way, they have not moved entirely. So, but the whole point is, part of this animosity against China comes from the fact that they have been playing in the kids' table. Why we don't want to sell NVIDIA chips to China? Why? It's because we fear that they're still playing in a different table. So I think the norms need to evolve, and you have to be aware and also understand that at the beginning the norms can be different than when you are going to end up. But we need to have the practicality and the pragmatism to change them. And when Facebook tells you, oh, I will not be able to survive and many people will lose their jobs, then you have to say, that's fine. It's totally fine. If you cannot survive with norms that are respectable, you don't deserve to be here. Okay? And people said, oh, no, but I'm competing with firms that are not doing that. Well, you're also competing with firms that use human trafficking. And that doesn't justify you to use human trafficking. So my point is, in the adult table, we play like adults. So if Facebook will not survive because they can't sustain acceptable norms of behavior, then we're much better off eliminating Facebook. So if it's just very simple to me. You understand? It's just, I don't need to make 8 billion people pay to sustain 200,000. That sounds like a bad trade-off, really bad trade-offs. So in my view, um, we need to actually understand when to change this. Um, how do you see? Oh my God, so many questions. I'm gonna try to go fast. How do you see progress and investment in AI competing with progress and investment in climate repair and protection? Wow. So two things. I think in AI we will have what is called overinvestment. This is exactly the same of what happened in 2001 with communications, where we had an overinvestment in communications, okay, technology, and we had to go through a crisis, and some of the firms have to go bankrupt. I think AI will go through the same process. It's not exactly a bubble. This is not a bubble. This is an overinvestment. So we have waste. Okay, I think that will happen. What are your thoughts about the possibility of all the general intelligence? This is not a problem about general intelligence. It's about a problem that it doesn't matter if you have general intelligence. If you have an individual, let me just show you. If you have an individual that has no empathy whatsoever, that the person just produces in their mind any reality that they want, uh, uh, these individuals tend to be socially damaging. Okay, so just a psychopath is someone that has no empathy whatsoever. So it's not about intelligence. It's irrelevant, the intelligence. It's about the fact that you need to live in a society and that you need to have a moral compass because of that society. So when people talk about general intelligence, yes, general intelligence is the ability to imagine that you have a map. Look, I have here my prop for my classes. Imagine that you have a map, and this is what we have invented, but truly they're like dots. This is what we have invented. So the space of knowledge that we know is not dense. It's like it has a lot of holes in the middle. It's like music. We have not invented every single song that could have invented. Is that okay? And with all the rhythms. So we have different rhythms and different songs. And what the computer can do and general intelligence is just to fill those holes. The general intelligence is to be able to extrapolate close to the boundaries of this knowledge. So to do something that is new, but is close to the boundary. But this extrapolation needs to have a purpose, and that's where the computer fails. Now, Madonna is here, and the Beatles are here. Puccini is like here, okay? Like further back. Is that okay? Verdi is like 2 million miles away from the knowledge that existed at that. And I cannot actually draw Mozart. That's even further out. In painting, Van Gogh is here, is not within the space. Picasso is here, is not within the space. Now, once you invent Picasso, the computer can do all the extrapolation in the middle. So it is about a purpose. Is that okay? It's inventing and using our brain with a purpose. And therefore, that requires all the other aspects that humans have, which is all the socializing. We are smarter because we are in a society and we actually transfer knowledge from one to each other. So, and we have been doing that for hundreds of thousands of years. So it's that ability to transfer knowledge from the elderly to the young that we enhance the ability of our brain. Wow, there's so many questions. So these are really good questions. I'm sorry. So let me just answer. Is this going to be? It's 6 more minutes. So let me just take one more question, and I answer, and then we close down. I want to be cognizant of the and I promise you that if you come, we will grab a coffee and chat. Okay. So it does happen. I'm a coffee drinker, and I drink coffee at any moment in time. So I'm always willing to do that. So let me just answer. Is hope in an economic variable? What does it? No, hope is not an economic variable, Arthur. That's a very good question. Hope is a belief where we reject the data. Okay? The best decisions that humankind have made were not supported by the data. And I don't think that people realize that. So since we were monkeys, okay, since we were monkeys until, you know, about the 1800s, the only thing that we do is we go to the village next door, kill people and enslave people. Okay, that's it. That was our goal. There are monkeys that still do that. Is that okay? So we evolved from them. We inherited the violence that they have. And if you look at those, you know, several million years, okay, we consistently are richer the more slaves we have. So I want to think, if I give that data to an AI and I ask how many slaves should I have, I'm telling you, it's going to say like you should have 2 billion slaves. What was the data that was used by the first person that decided to do some economic activity without slaves? What data that person used? Had no data. When we gave vote to women, what was the data that we used? Actually, our standards of living had improved tremendously in 2000 years. Tremendously. Without women voting. Why give the vote to women? A computer will say, don't give, actually give 2 votes to men. Makes no sense to give the vote to the women. It is a notion of equity and equality what needs to be added to the data. For us to say, no, I really don't care about the data. I want to give a vote to women. Why? Because I think it's fair. Has nothing to do with data. So you see, the best decisions we have made, we're not at least we're not relying on past experiences. Okay, we're actually the opposite. Is that we dare, and again, this is hope, the probability that that will work is 0. But if you think about these two notions, it's because we added a notion of equality and fairness to the decision. And we tried it out, and it just happened to be that it worked out. Now, you know, we have more people voting, and gender is not an issue. And as we go along in a society, we still make these same mistakes. And I am incredibly hopeful that humankind will succeed. Not because I know the answers, and it's exactly the opposite. It's because I know the answers do not exist today, but we will figure it out. We have done it in the past. We're the most flexible species on Earth, the most adaptable species on Earth. And that's because when we act together. And that togetherness is what gives a tremendous power to humans. I mean, the only one that compares are orangutans that learn from each other. It's the only other species that learns from each other. And if you look at the length of my arms, I look like an orangutan. Good. I just wanted to thank everybody for being here. Thank you so much for being here. I really hope that our paths cross again. If you, by any chance, come to MIT, do not be a stranger. Just show up. My office is always open. Actually, the office of every faculty at MIT is open. We are an open door university. So you just knock on the door. If the person is busy, they're going to say, I'm busy. But if they're not busy, they're going to grab a coffee with you. That's almost certain. Is that okay? Don't, yeah, you know, don't come too frequently because I also have to work, but but we can organize groups of 5 for coffee. So thank you everybody for being here. Kari, I'll pass the baton to you.
Thank you so much, Professor Rigobon, for such an engaging session. We just have a few more slides to share as we close out our session tonight. Let's see, my screen will share. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So we hope that this session gave you kind of a meaningful look into the MIT Executive MBA experience and the world-class faculty that you'll learn from here at Sloan. So if today sparked your interest at all in the MIT Executive MBA, just a quick reminder that our application is open and the first deadline is on December 4th. So it's coming up in a few weeks. And you are guaranteed to have a decision by February 6th. Here on the slide, we've got a number of rounds, but we highly recommend you put in your application in early, especially if you are interested in any scholarship or fellowship opportunities. So if you're thinking about applying, now is a great time to get started. We also have several upcoming events where you can connect with our team, learn more about our program, or hear directly from our current students alumni. So we've got, if you're in Northern California or Denver, we've got some in-person events coming your way. We've also got some virtual and hybrid events starting in December. We've got our Program Insights event, which is a hybrid, both in person and virtual. So feel free to come to that if you're interested in more deeper dive and also having the opportunity to hear from more of our faculty and our students. And lastly, to round out the year, we have our virtual session on why tech leaders choose the MIT EMBA. So as always, you can check out our website for additional upcoming events, connect with an admissions advisor, and of course, learn more about our program. But thank you again for spending part of your evening with us. We hope to see you at a future MIT EMB event and hopefully on campus soon. Have a great evening.